done my job now since more than 60 years. And of course I have collected an increasing mass of material. I just show you shortly a few things. These are cave paintings. This is the Val Camonica. Val Camonica is near the border from Switzerland to Italy. This here is at the Hopi Indians. The Hopi Indians live in Arizona in the United States. There are walls full of Hopi paintings. This is in a complete different place. This is in Nazca, Peru. You remember the lines of Nazca? I will come back to them too. If you fly over Nazca, you see this 29-meter high figure. One arm is bending towards heaven, the other arm towards the earth. Even in official archaeology, they call this figure El Astronauta, the astronaut. In Peru, they even have made figures just painted into the mountains in a way that you can see them only from the air. Look here, you see nothing directly. In practice, it looks like this. But you must fly, otherwise you cannot see this. Now this continues worldwide. In the Sahara Desert, we have gigantic buildings, look like paintings, look like helmets. One of the arms here with some sort of bracelets on it. This figure in the original is 6 meters high. It was discovered in 1951 by a French archaeologist. Now why do I show you just cave paintings from over the world? This is Australia. The gods are the ones with the rays, the glittering rays, the helmets. The question, why did our ancestors worldwide, separated in different continents, represent their gods or their heavenly beings in a similar way? They had no contact together. This is Australia, Kimberley Ranges. There were no flying machines, there were no tourists, there were no ships going from one place to the other. I mean, the people in the Sahara Desert, today's Algeria, or the one in North America had no contact. So why do they represent their gods in the same way? And later, in evolution, humans learned how to chisel the gods. There is one city called Tulum. Tulum is on the Caribbean lake in Mexico. The whole city is dedicated to the descending gods. In archaeology, they call them bees, but this has nothing to do with the bee. You see, there are 2 legs, spread legs. There are always the wings, the arms, and the hands manipulating some control. In reality, it looks like this. But the reality is, you see the wings? Often the chiselings fell up or were kicked off since the thousands of years. Another one, I like this one especially, he has even shoes on. Again, the wings falling down from heaven. Originally, it looks like this. It's all destroyed here, the wings, but you still can see the shoes, the legs, and so on. Hopi Indians have made different forms of gods. In many of the museums in Central America, also in North America, you find these figures with helmets. And you ask the local archaeologists, what is it? Well, it's always los dioses, the gods. What kind of dioses, what kind of gods? Nobody knows, just the gods. Far away from the United States or from South America is Japan. The Japanese Stone Age people, they made these figures. They are called dogus. They were high figures, holy figures, but the Japanese Stone Age people had no idea of glasses. So, what did they copy? Why? This one is really descending from the sky. He has a helmet on here. In modern terms, you can even see a micro before his lips. His hands are bending downward, the feet up. This is in Villahermosa. Villahermosa is in Mexico. The Hopi Indians in Arizona, USA, they represent their Kachinas. The Kachinas were the teachers from heaven in forms of paintings, like here, but also in form of figures. When you go one day to Arizona, USA, There is a museum of the Hopi, and in the museum there's a shopping center, of course, and then you can buy these figures. And you find the scientific literature. And there are different of these figures. And you ask them, what is it? They all say it's kachinas. And what, please, is a kachina? The kachinas were the descending beings from the sky who taught our ancestors thousands of years ago. And they told them, we will return in the far future. And in order not to forget the visit of the kachinas, they still make them today. I mean, we have to be careful and to ask us what was going on there. This is not imagination. This is living mythology. And this continues, of course. And I have good arguments to defend my point. In Mexico is a city, a Maya city with the name of Palenque. In Palenque are different pyramids. This one is called the Temple of Inscription, because up here archaeologists discovered 816 inscriptions. That's why they call it Temple of Inscription. It was in 1949 when Professor Dr. Rutz discovered up here a groove, and they started to chisel out inside. They found a stairway going down. But at that time, in 1949, it was all covered with stones. It took 3 years before they were under the pyramid. And there was a door in the form of a triangle. That was opened abruptly. Of course, there was no gate at that time. That's for against the tourists. And they looked into a room. The room was 9 meters long, 4 meters large, and 7 meters high. And there was a tomb, and the tomb was covered with a large tombstone, large 3.80 meters to 2.20 meters, 1 block. And on this tombstone, an incredible chiseling. I published this first time in Chariots of the Gods. I just give you now my version, and then I explain you what archaeology sees. There is something like a cover all over it, a frame. In the center, this man is sitting, bending forward, almost like a racing motorcyclist. You see, he has his nose on some sort of oxygen mask. He uses his 2 hands, the upper hand, the lower hand, to manipulate some control. He's sitting on a chair. The heel of his left foot is on a kind of pedal. He separated the chair, and outside of this apparatus, you see something like a linking flame. Now, in archaeology, of course, they have complete different explanation. They said what I suggested is all nonsense. There is a writing around it, you will see it later, and the little part of this writing was translated. And it was absolutely clear, this here is Pakal. Pakal was the second last ruler of the city of Palenque. And Pakal, so the archaeologist, she said that he's sitting on a sacrificial altar. And this here, you know, the frame up here and the frame there, looking like this. This is the open mouth of a mythological monster. This here and this. This is the upper teeth and the lower teeth. So Pakal is sitting between the 2 teeth. He's falling into the earth, eaten by this mythological monster. And out of his body we see the tree of life or the cross of life. What I hear explained as an exhaust in the eyes of archaeology, it's nothing else than the stylized hairs of the beard of the weather god. So this goes on, and it all makes no sense. In the meantime, we learned to translate the writing around this. The best translators of Maya writings are the 2 professors, David and George Stewart, from the University of Texas in Austin. Father and son, that's why they have the same name, Stewart. And they are the best epigraphs, and they translated this text now a few years ago. And he said, yes, it is Pakal. But all this is not the open mouth of a monster. This has nothing to do with cross of life or tree of life or with stylized hairs of the beard of the weather god. Every little detail has to do with the cosmos, with the universe. Pakal is flying away from the planet Earth. That's the most modern interpretation and translation. On the third tablet of the Temple of Inscription, Stewart and Stewart found dates in connection with this Pakal. The date shows the year 1,247,650 years back in time. Another date says Pakal will return to Earth in 4,114 years, measured from that time. Now, also I'm accused since Chariots of the Gods that I present this picture in a false way. You're not allowed to look at it crossways. You have to look at it lengthways. This looks like this here. Now, I am a man with imagination, and if I have to look at lengthways and not crossways, my fantasy goes over with me. I give you an example. We are here now in Mexico. We jump to Asia. In Asia is this gigantic temple. In Java is called the Borobudur. The Borobudur is composed of many stupas. Stupas for us, they look like a bell. These things here. Now the stupas in Buddhism has different explanations. 14 different explanations. One of the explanations of the stupa is the stupa is the small vehicle in which the humans reach the big vehicle on the firmament of the God. That's why these stupas are not empty. In every stupa, the young Buddha is sitting. What is he doing here? He's sitting there, he uses his hands. Symbolically, he thinks he's in the small vehicle which brings him up to the firmament, to the big vehicle of the God. Now use a little imagination. Stupa, right? And everything looks different. It's all a question of the spirit of time. So 50 years ago we had other explanations. Now we have this explanation, and I have the feeling the modern explanation makes much more sense than yesterday's explanation. There is one other point which really nerves me on this planet. And this point is Nazca. You all know Nazca. Nazca is a desert in Peru. It's about 500 kilometers south of Lima, the capital of Peru. When you fly over Nazca, you see some strange lines. The locals, they differentiate between the lines. They call it las líneas, the small ones, and the large ones. The largest of the lines, the longest of the line, is 3.8 kilometers long. Then there are small lines, very small ones, not comparable to this one. They look like airstrips. They are not airstrips, but they look like airstrips. The longest of the small lines here are 23 kilometers long. And in the midst of these lines, you have figures. Figures of fishes, monkeys, spiders, flowers, all kinds of figures. Now what nerves me, whenever on television they speak about Nazca, they never show you these pictures. They explain you, well, Nazca is a desert, and then you see some archaeologists scratching away the surface. On the desert you have little brown stones. They scratch it away just with your shoes. And then you realize there's a bright shining surface coming out of the dark, which is true. And of course you can scratch it away and you can make figures. No problem. But they do not show you these pictures. They just show you the figures. And these are the mystery. You see the mountains nearby. Normal mountains, they come together from both sides to the mountain top. Here we have some mountains where the top is cut off completely. Yeah. You see, that's a normal mountain here. Normal mountain. But not this one. And under them, you see something like an airstrip. Under it, something like a zigzag line. You never see it on television. All they tell you are these figures of fishes, monkeys, spiders, and all that little thing. I like to show you about 20 pictures about Nazca, which are simply incredible. Ga maar weiter. This is Nazca. Ever seen this on television or in a book? I made these pictures some 20 years ago in the early morning. We made them by helicopters. I was sitting in a helicopter. This is Nazca. In the meantime, since Nazca is known, there are at least 20 different archaeological explanations. I learned Nazca was an astronomical calendar. Another one said no, it was a cult for the water gods. Look at this picture. There are 4 of these, 1, 2, 3, 4 lines. The next one said no, it was a cult for the mountain gods. Then I read it's a cult for agriculture. In another book, I learned it was a pre-Inca sport place, some sort of pre-Inca Olympia. Others said it's copies of Fata Morganas, a start place for hot air balloons, ecoplotes, boundary makers, procession streets, maps, a cultural atlas. Is this a cultural atlas? Have you ever seen these pictures on television? No. They lie at us with the pictures. They don't want that the large public see these pictures because we should start to think again. This is Nazca, a cultural atlas. Nazca is still a mystery today. We have no explanation. Of course, I have my suggestion. I, by the way, never said that Nazca was the landing place for extraterrestrial spaceships. All true, I'm quoted always on television, on newspapers we did. This is Eric von Däniken, the landing place for extraterrestrial. The spaceport of extraterrestrial. That was never my idea. I wrote in Chariots of the Gods and in later book that it was a cult. But the cult had to do with extraterrestrials. This is true. I could imagine, and I know it from the old literature, that there is a mother spaceship which is for hundreds and hundreds of years on the way. The mother spaceship surrounds the Earth. They make measurements because after a long trip, they need raw material, they need energy. We have no idea what kind of energy. Something, maybe uranium, whatever. They make measurements and they realize there, Nazca Desert. Nazca still today is a big part for minery. And there were no humans. So they said, okay, we send down just an automatic probe, something like a satellite. Of course, there's nobody there who makes an airline for them. The probe comes down, maybe in the last 20 meters, they use something like an air cushioning. Now stone and sand is blown away until this machinery comes to a standstill. They make exact measurements. They go back up to the mother spaceship. Maybe 2 or 3 natives have seen this space probe coming down here. They could not understand it. Now the natives come on the desert and they see a little line, just a little line with blown away stones and sand. And now they go back to their tribe and say, this was coming from the sky, from the firmament, from the gods. They left this here. The natives think that the gods want some lines. And now the natives start to make lines. Large ones, small ones, lines in all directions, big ones, and so on. They all believe that the gods want this. After some generation, a priest may have a good idea. They always have good ideas. And says, we must show them that we have offerings for them. Now they start to make figures in the midst of the lines. Figures of monkeys, spiders, fishes, all kind of things. That was my idea of Nazca. And not, it was the spaceport for extraterrestrials. Anyhow, the pictures you saw before, that's why I show it here, are never shown in public. And that's what nerves me here. What is going on this planet? The same thing happened according to the Great Pyramid. Of course, this is an object of controversy. There are many, many theories, and practically every year I receive another theory, mostly by engineers, by brilliant people. And every theory makes sense. But the fact is, we really don't know which theory is correct. What have they done? The normal way of explanation is that the natives, 2500 BC, they constructed the ramp. Now the pyramid is 4 kilometers away from the Nile. So the ramp becomes higher and higher and higher. The ramp finally has more volume than the pyramid itself. You need more stones for the ramp than you need for the pyramid. Even if you make a ramp around the pyramid, it doesn't change. It has more volume than the pyramid itself. All this is possible. You can move the stone blocks by this. But never forget, in every technology there is an evolution. Our Stone Age people first had to learn how to move the stone blocks, how you can do it. But Cheops, the builder of this pyramid, his father Snorfu came right out from Stone Age. Where is the time, the evolution of technology to test all these different possibilities? Of course you can do it in that way, but the evolution of technology speaks against it. Stone Age time. Now, in the meantime, we know a few more things about the Great Pyramid. The oldest god of the Egyptian was Osiris. Osiris is the same thing as the star of Orion. Isis, the lady of Osiris, is the same in the star in the firmament of Sirius. So Orion and Sirius are in Egyptian mythology put together. In the meantime, we know that the three main pyramids have the shape of the Orion star belt. You know, inside there are different shafts. The shafts point directly to the star, the belt of Orion, and to Sirius. So Osiris and Isis up there. In our solar system, we have three inner planets. Inner planets means in the center is the sun, then comes Mercury, Venus, the Earth, the three inner planets. Inside the Great Pyramid, you have three inner rooms, and you see the distances between the three inner rooms are not equal, they are different. They are the same distances as the distances of the three inner planets. The Great Pyramid is not standing just by coincidence somewhere. The distance to the North Pole is the same as the distance to the center of the Earth. Now these are only a few curiosity, but they all do exist, of course. Now we have questions. If this is not coincidence, how did they know it? They could know nothing about Mercury. They did not know Mercury at that time. So the distance between Mercury, Venus, and the Earth. If somebody told them, again, why? Thousands of years ago, the pyramid was not looking like this. The pyramid was covered with stone plates. Some of them are here, still here. It was all covered. There was no entry. And then came the Caliph Al-Mamun. It was 829 BC. And he simply made a hole into the pyramid. The real entry would have been up there. He could not find it. That was pure coincidence later that they found there. Now in the Great Pyramid, you have different rooms. Today they call the upper room, they call the king's chamber, the lower room, the queen's chamber, and under the pyramid is another room called the unfinished chamber. This is the so-called upgoing stairway. It's 23 meters high, only roughly 1 meter high. So 23 meters long, roughly 1 meter high. So you have to go down on your knees. Then comes the so-called Great Gallery. At the end of the Great Gallery is the king's chamber. Down here is the queen's chamber. It looks like this, the upcoming shaft, then the Great Gallery, king's chamber, queen's chamber. Now I'm going into the queen's chamber because there is a hole in the wall. And this picture I show you because I want that you compare my hand, my finger, with the longitude of this. It's about 14 centimeters. Now you have to know, this is very important, that this hole exists only since 160 years. Before 160 years, there was no hole in the wall. By the way, the same thing happened on the other side. This is the south side. It's got that scheiß name here. This is the south side, and this is the other side here. Only since 160 years. Why? 160 years ago, again, a British engineer, his name was Mr. Nixon, came to the pyramid. Of course, he was looking for new rooms. He hoped that he will find some treasures, and he had a little hammer, and he knocked on the wall every few centimeters. And on top side, it sounded hollow. Here, this is the south side, and on the upper side. And only now he opened the wall. In archaeology, they were absolutely sure that these two shafts here are only 2 meters long. They are called symbolic shafts. Then a friend of mine, a German engineer, came, Rudolf Gantenbrink, and he constructed a robot. The robot is composited out of steel. They put 6 electromotors inside, halogen lamps, of course, video cameras, movable in every direction. Rudolf Gantenbrink went to the chief of antiquity in Egypt, Professor Sayhavas at that time, and he said, I can go with this robot in the shaft. I can show you how long it is. They were against it, but finally Sayhavas said, come on, let him do. He will find out that he's not right, he's wrong. So the robot went into the shaft. The first 2 meter horizontal. Then they climb up inside. Always the wall, the stones changed. It was sandstone, it was granite, it was alabaster, you will see it later. Always openings like doors. Now if you see these pictures, ladies and gentlemen, you may have the impression that this is a gigantic way in there. A shaft? No, it's not. Remember my hand. It's only about 14 centimeters side length on one side. So you cannot climb in there. Not even a Lilliput man. So the robot climbed up inside the shaft. The 2 meters were passed, my God. And archaeologists were looking down at the monitor. They were sweating and saying, what's going on here? This is alabaster, by the way. Then they found crashes in different forms inside the shaft. It looks as if some thousands of years ago something was pushed through the shaft here and left some traces behind. The robot continued his climbing inside, and on meter 32, a stone blocked the continuation here. The robot had to put out. It was too high, the robot, so they had to lower him, which they did, and 5 days later, the robot took this obstacle and continued his trip. This was meter 32, inside the Great Pyramid, always slowly going up and up. So the robot continued. The walls were alabaster, absolutely polished. And finally they came to a sort of door with 2 bracelets. One of them was falling down, but it was not found on the right side, on the left side, but on the right side. You will see it here. Now for the next pictures, please watch exactly the laser. Not my laser, this laser point here, the red dot. It goes under the door. So we knew that there must be a continuation behind it. All this is about 20 years, 25 years old. You have certainly heard about in the television or in the media here. The question is, what happened since then? You hear nothing of the continuation. That's why I bring up this case again. 8 years later, the American National Geographic Society came up with a new robot. The new robot had the possibility to make a hole, to dig a hole into this door. Bring this to you, endlich. Yeah. So, they made a worldwide TV show, live to the world public, and said for the first time, they will now put a camera through the hole. It was all a lie. They had put the cameras 3 weeks before already through the hole. They knew exactly that Behind the door, there is nothing. If there would have been something sensational, they would have never shown it to the public. We are told lies. Anyhow, we had this hole now in this little door, and 23 centimeters behind it was this wall. And you see the wall is broken somehow. So another 12 years later, a rich man from Singapore arrived. And he said to the Department of Antiquity in Cairo, he has a new robot. And this new robot could destroy this wall simply by vibration. But the Department of Antiquity said, no, no possibility, we will not give you the permission. The only permission you have is to make a very, very small hole, not bigger than for an endoscope. With an endoscope, you go into your stomach. Now, the hole was in the first door, and the wall is 23.5 centimeters behind it. So you need a long digging machine, which they did. They made a small hole. They put an endoscope through it. The endoscope doesn't make big figures, big pictures, just small pictures, but hundreds of them. The computer puts them together in the right way. And what's behind it? Another room. There is something we don't know. Is it painting or writing, whatever it is, but definitely it's not hieroglyphs. Now we have another question. You see, archaeology is sure that the Great Pyramid was constructed by a pharaoh with the name of Cheops. Cheops was roughly 2400 BC, 4th dynasty. But Cheops is called a tyrant. Tyrants, they all are dictators. Normally, if Cheops would have constructed the Great Pyramid, the pyramid should be full with inscriptions. I am the one, I am the greatest, I did it. But in the Great Pyramid, there is not one single inscription. Nothing. Not one hieroglyph. The total anonymity. It doesn't fit together with Cheops. Now, old Arabian historians, I mean Ibrahim Abdul al-Mas'udi, al-Makrizi, all these people living thousands of years ago, they said the Great Pyramid was constructed before the Great Flood by a ruler. His name was Saurid. And they precisely say Saurid is the same figure which the Hebrew community call Enoch. You remember Enoch? He was taught by the extraterrestrials. Enoch learned the language of them. As soon as you know the language, one of the teachers says to Enoch, human, look out of the window. You see this little light there? You humans, you call it moon. But the moon has no light by itself. The moon receives its light from the sun, and he explains him the different phases of the moon. The stranger says to Enoch, you see this big shining light up there? You humans, you call it sun. But look at all the other little lights there. They are all suns. Around the suns surround planets. Planets, your planet, the Earth surround your sun in 365 days, plus not only leak years, but leak hours. So, I know, of course, that our ancestors in the Stone Age time, they were afraid of nature. They were afraid of the earthquaking. They were afraid of the lightning, of the thundering. They could not understand these things. So the first religion on our planet were natural religions. Of course, what else? But this is not the same. The teachers, the extraterrestrials, give information, scientific information. An earthquake or the sun does not say to the human, you see this little light out there? You humans call it moon. The moon has no light by itself. The moon receives its light from the sun and explains the different phases of the moon. Why is the moon sometimes full, half, why is it disappeared, etc. This means scientific information coming from up, down to the humans. And that's the difference between natural religion. Now here, Enoch, according to all traditions, should be, and his son Methuselah, the builder of the Great Pyramid. I told you Enoch disappeared in a fiery chariot. Before he went away, he went back to the earth one day to say goodbye to his family. His oldest son was Methuselah. Enoch said to his son Methuselah, and now my son, I give you all these books written by your father's hand. Keep them carefully for the generations after the great flood. because this was before the Great Flood. Where are the books of Enoch? The only one we have, the one is from Ethiopia. But Enoch gave to his son over 100 books. Sooner or later, we will find some rooms in the pyramid with the books of Enoch. And there are other strange mysteries in this building, not known to the public. There is a room under the pyramid. In archaeology, it's called the unfinished chamber. The tourists go to this main entrance. Then you have a crossing. You can cross upway to the so-called Great Gallery, or you can go down. But the tourists are never allowed to go down, because this shaft goes deep under the planet. The shaft is 119 meters long, quite a distance. Then you come to an unfinished room. It was discovered in the year 827 AD in our time by the Caliph Al-Mamun. He was the first who opened the pyramid. Al-Caliph Al-Mamun said that in a shaft here, which you just will see, he found 4 doors with 4 different rooms. In one room he found metals, very thin metals, which do not rust. In another room he found mummified beings with long elongated heads. And there were writings, but he and his scientists at his time could not decipher the writings, which means it is not Enoch, it is not Cheop's time. Now Al-Mamun said that he himself gave order to change everything down here so that no one after him would ever found these rooms again. I was down there many times. I was also knocking on the wall with the little hammer, and you have no chance. You cannot find anyhow nothing. But the mysteries continue. About 2500 BC, Herodotus, the Greek historian, was here. And he said, under the Great Pyramid is a sea, a lake. And in the lake, covered by water, is a sarcophagus. In Egyptology, we always said, this is rubbish. There cannot be a lake under the pyramid. In the meantime, this lake was found. You grab down. There are 2 steps in the meantime, ladders. You go down here, 26 meters. The shaft is so large that there are 2 ladders, one next to each other. You came to a room down in the chiseling, and there are 7 niches cut out of the rock. But only in 2 niches are sarcophaguses. This one is black basalt, means volcanic rock. Another one is granite. They told me there was nothing in there when they found it. I'm not sure if this is true. Now from this point, we go deeper. Before you just saw a shaft which was large enough for 2 ladders. The continuation is not the same shaft, there's only 1 ladder going down there. And then you closer come with every step under the Great Pyramid. And there is a lake. And in the lake, a sarcophagus, covered by water, exactly as Herodotus told us 2,500 years ago. You see it here? Now these wooden blocks, wooden trees are from our time, because they opened the sarcophagus. Again here they told me they found nothing inside. If it's true, I have no way to. Here's the sarcophagus, covered by water. Absolutely clear water. Now in antiquity, before these extraterrestrial ethnologists left the earth, they promised to our forefathers that they will return one day. And this return went into the mythology and into the belief of every community. In the past, when, for example, Francisco Pizarro was the conqueror, the Spanish conqueror who conquered today's Peru. When he came to the coast, the natives believed that he is the long-awaited God. They fell down on their knees. The same thing, for example, with Hernando Cortés. He was the one who conquered Mexico. The king was Moctezuma, the king of the Aztecs. Even the king believed that Hernando Cortes is the long-awaited God. Or James Cook in the South Sea, all the same thing. Whenever the first contact was made with natives worldwide, they always were already expected. The natives always believed that these are the long-awaited gods. So I want to make clear, this expectation of returning of somebody is not a Christian invention. This is much older than Christianity. And what do we have today? I'm educated as a Catholic, and we learned that one day Jesus will return. But the Muslim society believes the same. They believe that one day their Mahdi will return. As we all know, the Jewish community believes the same. They are sure that their Messiah will return. Every religion, still living religion of today, has their belief of the return of somebody from up there. Now, honestly, not every religion can be right. Some of them must be wrong. I think this promise of return was given by the extraterrestrials long time ago, and they will return. I have to clarify two little things. The critics always say, Mr. von Däniken does obviously not know that the distances between the stars are measured in light years, and these distances are so terribly high, nobody can reach light years. I'm sorry, this is not true. We have a primitive way to do it. Everyone knows the American space shuttle. With every shot, you have a heavy load of roughly 30 tons. Prefabricated objects shut up between the Earth and the Moon. You connect them, you put them together to a gigantic wheel. It has to be a wheel. Soon as the wheel turns around its own axis, you have a centrifugal force, which means artificial gravity. And then you start this wheel very, very slowly. It might take 100 years in acceleration before you reach only 2% of the speed of light. But with 2% of the speed of light, you would reach the distance of 10 light years within 500 human years. Now you may say, this is impossible, nobody will survive that. You don't have to survive it. Just look at this as a generation spaceship. There are many generations on board. Oh yes, there are British restaurants, Swiss cheese fondue, Greek restaurants up there, television, sports, whatever. Maybe it takes 26 generations before you reach the center. Until some years ago, we have learned that the Earth has a unique position in the universe. We are not too close to the sun, not too hot, not too far away, not too cold, etc. In the meantime, grace to Hubble telescope and other technologies, we know that our Milky Way is full of Earth-like planets. NASA suggested only now our Milky Way, we must have about 4.555 billions of Earth-like planets. So they are on the way. They will find out which sun has Earth-like planets in the correct distances. Now they give the crew 500 years to construct a new spaceship. Now, they were 500 years on the way. They have other 500 years to make the evolution, the industries, to construct a new spaceship. And now it starts to be interesting. From the Earth, a spaceship started 500 years on the way. After a stop of 500 years, there are two, the old one and the new one. Each one has 500 years again, and then are 4 and 6 and 32, etc. Now a snowball system starts to work. With the speed of only 2% of the speed of light, you would colonize our whole Milky Way in 10 millions of years, starting from one point. And all what the Earthlings had to do is to construct the first spaceship. Now I made this calculation with 2% of the speed of light. If we calculate 10% of the speed of light, it will not take 10 millions, only 2 millions or so. So always what I read in science, it is impossible to reach the distance between the stars. I'm sorry, it's not true. Why should extraterrestrials be similar to us? I said, Enoch, the ethnologists, or in the Bible, they had sex with humans. Normal evolution goes in a way that on other planets, complete different beings evolve. I can imagine flying elephants or whatever. But there is a theory, which is not from me, it's from the Swedish Nobel Prize winner, Svante Arrhenius. He's dead since 70 years. The theory is called panspermia. It goes like this. Somewhere in our Milky Way, the first intelligent form of life appeared. Now we can cry, stop. How did it start this? Give me a piece of paper, and I make a perfect circle. Then I give this piece of paper back to you. It goes from hand to hand. And I ask you the question, what did the circle start? Your logic says, well, Mr. van Däniken must have started somewhere, but you cannot give an answer because the circle is closed in itself. In astrophysics, they say in the beginning was the Big Bang. Okay, what started the Big Bang? Or in religion or philosophy, we say in the beginning was God. And what started God? We have no answer, neither in philosophy nor in science. So just somewhere it started. The first intelligent form of life had a wish to spread out their own form of life in a certain part of their Milky Way. Now they do not send spaceships out there. They simply infect a section of the Milky Way with spores of life. Make this, and now because of your hand, you're rubbling, you have 10,000s of cells. In each and every cell you have the DNA. In the DNA you have the copy of your body, not only of your body, including your ancestor. So you infect a section of a Milky Way with DNA. Of course you know exactly, it's like dust, that the biggest part of this will come into the gravity of a sun, will die. Another part will come to the gravity of planets which cannot support this form of life, like Jupiter. A small part of it will make a landing in the gravity of a planet which is similar than the one who started. And now life starts on this planet. I have learned in school that it all started on Earth with this primordial soup. Some atoms come together and form molecules, etc. In the meantime, modern science says no. The information of life came from outside. And funny enough, that information, that modern information, you can also find in the old holy writings. I mean, in this section here, you know only the Bible. And God, or the gods, created humans according their own image. If you look at it this way, we are the offsprings. And that's why they could have had sex with us. We are the same family. And that's why they promised they will return. And one day they will return. And sometimes I have the feeling we are already under observation. All these past decades, I was never a believer in UFO. I was rather a skeptic in UFO. There was too much rubbish on the field. But I had to change my opinion slowly and slowly. And to finish this speech, I like to show you a UFO film which you cannot falsificate. I have received this film from an air fighter pilot, an American pilot. He wrote me that he made the film on April 20th, 2013 on the airport Hernandez near Aguadilla. This is in Puerto Rico. Now, in the fighter airport, you have a camera. The camera is fixed. You cannot move the camera. You cannot take the camera in your hand. And you see on screen every messages, all the dates, which change every second. What dates? What is the speed of the aircraft? How high is it from the ground? How far away is the other aircraft, etc. What is the exact geographical location? That's why you cannot falsify it. You see the dates change always. Now the object comes up here. The pilot wrote me sometimes it was faster and then a little slower. Sometimes they even changed their shape. The object was first flying over fields, farmer houses, then over the airport, Aguadilla. They stopped every flight, air control, for 2.5 hours. Then came the harbor, and you will see the object jumps into the water. It's real, it's not fiction. You just see the water springing up. And after a few seconds, it comes out of the water, but of a sudden, it's two objects, two separate objects. And don't forget the date, forget the date, forget the date, forget the dates, which change always. Now it's in the water. Now we have two. We have no such technology on Earth. Is somebody observing us, learning our languages? Will they be returned and without a shock? In this country here, you are full of what you call crop circles. Of course, we know so many crop circles are falsificates. We know how they do it and who they are, etc. But there are other crop circles which appear within minutes. Absolutely fantastic. They are filmed with some little lights are there. What is going on? I have the impression that somebody tries to educate us slowly, so that we are not shocked. They make these pictures, they show up like a UFO. They want that we discuss about it, not to shock us. Slowly. This humanity should start to think about it. The time is ripe that we translate the old text in a modern version. At the same time, the time is ripe that we find some new shafts in the Great Pyramid, that we find some books of Enoch, that we start to analyze these UFOs in a modern way, that we start to find the proof for these crop circles. And all this, ladies and gentlemen, what I do has nothing to do with the new religion. You have to believe nothing. I turn myself in a tomb if some idiots come up and make out of my theory some sort of sect. That will be the last thing I want.